Hey guys, and welcome back to the story of Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and Liu Bei. We're now on to part 3, and this will probably be a 4-part story in the end. But I must apologize first before we jump right in. It has been a long time since part 2 and this part. I really apologize. There's been a lot of things going on in real life, and I had to prioritize the Let's Plays because that's the thing most people come to the channel to see, and the lore videos had to go onto the back burner. Which I don't think was a terrible thing. You know, we're not getting much information on Total War 3 Kingdoms as it is. So we're still trying to wait and see what information we're going to get in the future and what we can expect to see. So I know what sort of videos maybe we could put out. So it's not a big deal. We've got lots of time, I think, obviously till the fall when the game does release. But I did want to get these out a bit quicker and also do some other lore videos for some other things. So please bear with me, and I do apologize for that. Hopefully we'll get things sorted from this point onwards. But let's quickly go over what happened last time, just a general refresher, just in case it's been a long time since you've watched. Obviously, Liu Bei was underneath Liu Bei in his protection, and Liu Bei ended up dying, and his son took over the province, kind of the central provinces in China. He then surrendered to Cao Cao, allowing Cao Cao to gain a very strategic location in China, and forcing Liu Bei to flee. Cao Cao pursues him, as we talked about last time, and in the end, Liu Bei is still managing to escape with a lot of his great generals, such as Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Zhao Yun, and Zhuge Liang. So it's now important to talk about here at the beginning of the video, what is the situation in China? How do things look at this point? At the moment, Cao Cao has basically the entire north under his palm. He has the central area of China now, very good strategic location. He is now really the most powerful man in China. And comparing him to most of the other warlords, it would seem unlikely that any of them could stop him. But Liu Bei had to find a way. He currently had no stronghold. He had no men, basically. He didn't have much power left at this point. And so Liu Bei was in a desperate position. He needed help. He needed allies. And he needed to stop Cao Cao now. If Cao Cao was able to grow any bigger and take out the other warlords that were the few that were left, there's no way anyone could stop him. And that there was one warlord that maybe could help Liu Bei. And that was Sun Quan. Now, the Sun family had managed to gain a very good position in kind of the east and southeast of China, thanks to Sun Quan's older brother, Sun Ce, also known as the Little Conqueror. He'd managed to kind of take over a good portion of the land in this area, not to the same extent as Cao Cao, but still a very worthy and commendable piece of land for them to govern. And with his death, Sun Quan had taken over. He was obviously a younger man than maybe some of the other characters we've talked about at this point, but he ruled over his people and was well respected in the area. And it seemed likely that the Sun family would be the next target for Cao Cao. Now, the Sun family could just, give in, surrender to Cao Cao, and likely would be able to keep a lot of their titles and offices and stuff, but is that really what was good for the future of China and the people? And Sun Quan was unsure about that. And this was potentially Liu Bei's only chance of being able to stop Cao Cao before he gains too much power. So Liu Bei and Sun Quan decide to discuss alliance terms. Lu Su, who is an advisor for Sun Quan, ends up kind of being the go-between between these two groups. And it seems as though Zhuge Liang is sent to discuss a formation of an alliance with him to Sun Quan. Now, information on these events between Liu Bei's faction and Sun Quan's faction are hard historically to deduce due to the fact there are many contradictions from the writings on both sides. So people maybe who are on the side of Liu Bei and people on the side of Sun Quan, their writings are sometimes kind of different, usually put in a positive light on one side or one man from one side over the other. And in Romance of the Three Kingdoms, it tends to paint Liu Bei's men in a more favorable light. A good example would be Zhuge Liang compared to Sun Quan's advisors such as Zhao Yu and Lu Su. Now, Zhao Yu and Lu Su were two of Sun Quan's best advisors, but overall in the story, they tend to be mocked in some ways by Zhuge Liang, which is maybe not respectful towards them, maybe not correct. These two do seem like a very capable officers and commanders and advisors, but in the story of Romance of the Three Kingdoms, when they get compared to Zhuge Liang, there's light and day in some ways. Now, is that fair? It's hard to say. Is it historically accurate? Again, it's hard to say. But what we do know is, in the end, they are able to form an alliance. The Sun-Lu alliance joining together to try and take down Cao Cao and stop him from invading the Sun family lands. And this ultimately leads to the Battle of Qi Bi, or otherwise known as Red Cliffs. Now, the actual precise location of this is debated, but it's likely it was close to the Yangtze River. So this battle mostly took place upon the river. Now, this battle is vital. It's one of the most important points in the story of the Three Kingdoms, and you could say this is basically what leads to the Three Kingdoms happening. If things had gone differently in this battle, it's likely no one would have been able to stop Cao Cao. In the end of this battle, Sun Quan and Liu Bei do come out victorious. We're not going to talk too much about this battle specifically, just due to the fact that this whole battle could be its own video. There's so much to talk about here, it could be its whole of a video, so I do want to leave it for that at some point. But I will just give a basic rundown of kind of the forces and talk about some things maybe that specifically involve, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and Liu Bei. There's a couple of points to talk about with that. And really, there are so many small details and officers that are important, that are just as important to this event. But it doesn't involve Liu Bei and his brothers, so like I say, we'll be here for ages just talking about this one battle. So we will go over it at some point in the future. Mark my words, hopefully. So, Cao Cao is coming from the north with basically a vast forces. He's bringing his men from the north, from his recently conquered Jing province, and he's invading by the river. Now, obviously, the men of the north are not particularly adept when it comes to maybe fighting or sailing upon water. So they do use some help from the men of Jing province. Now, these little details here, everything comes into play. There's so many small details that are vital to this. It's ridiculous. And though Sun Quan and his forces are smaller than Cao Cao's, they are adept at fighting on the river. They know how to do this, how to fight in the water. And of course, they have some great advisors, some great strategists, mainly in the form of people like Zhuge Liang, Zhao Yu, Lu Su, Cheng Pu, Huang Ge, Gang Ning, and many more. All these advisors, strategists, and officers come into play during this battle on the side of Sun Quan and Liu Bei, and allow them to actually be able to overcome Cao Cao by using fire and, shall we say, some misinformation into the mix. Now, with that said about the battle, there is one particular story we will have to talk about involving Guan Yu. Though likely not a true story, Zhuge Liang had predicted that when Cao Cao would lose, he would retreat, and he knew exactly where he would go, and so he wanted to position an officer there to ambush him and stop him from escaping. Guan Yu, in the end, is chosen to be this man, but Zhuge Liang is unsure on this appointment, due to, as you might guess, the past relationship between Guan Yu and Cao Cao. We talked about this a lot last time, and so Guan Yu may be affected by the kindness Cao Cao showed him in the past. Guan Yu, though, is resolute, proclaiming he had already repaid Cao Cao by killing Yang Liang and Wen Chao when Cao Cao was fighting against Yuan Shao, and he pledges he will not let Cao Cao off. Zhuge Liang relents and promises that Cao Cao will make his way to the position he has foreseen, and if not, Guan Yu may have his head. So, at the end of the battle, Cao Cao's invading forces have been defeated from, as I said before, some very good officers and great strategy and misinformation. And actually, in fact, if you are interested in this battle, there's a good movie actually known as, I think it's just called Red Cliff. Came out quite a few years ago from this point. It's a very long movie. It's not exactly correct. They do a few changes here and there, but overall, it's a good example to see how they were able to overcome Cao Cao, and I just enjoyed it, because anything Romance of the Three Kingdoms, you know, it's always, or just Three Kingdoms, is always good to see being made into, you know, TV shows, games, etc. There's not enough of it, really, personally, I feel, but yes. But in Cao Cao's retreat, he comes across Guan Yu, just as Zhuge Liang had predicted, but Guan Yu cannot bring himself to strike him down, and even his men, and so Cao Cao is able to pass and escape. Obviously, after returning to camp, he and the others that are there are obviously extremely disappointed, and Zhuge Liang even orders Guan Yu to be executed here and there, but Liu Bei intervenes and he is pardoned. So I think this is kind of a very important event in the character of Guan Yu. The fact that he says he will not let Cao Cao go, but when he comes to the point where he has to deal with the situation in front of him, he actually couldn't do it. And we know Guan Yu is not exactly the most, shall we say, emotional man. You know, he's struck down a lot of people for not the best of reasons, you know. He'll strike people down if he has to, if he feels it's for the good. But in this one situation where Liu Bei needs him maybe to kill Cao Cao, who knows what would have happened if Cao Cao had died at this battle. But Guan Yu could not bring himself to do it. I'd love to know what you guys think about the character then. Do you think this aspect of Guan Yu just shows how great he is? Does this make even greater the fact that he couldn't bring himself to do it due to the fact the kindness Cao Cao had shown, even though he felt he had repaid him, he still couldn't do it? Or do you think this maybe shows, shall we say, an ineptitude of Guan Yu, and maybe this is a weakness of his, that maybe he's too honorable, too nice in this situation, and it was stupid? Rather than being brave and honorable, it's just stupid, maybe. I'd love to know what you guys think. Overall, I think this story likely, though, didn't happen in real life, just due to the fact that I feel like, even for Guan Yu, he probably would strike Cao Cao down if he had the chance, because that's such a big thing, and it just feels like such a potential thing they could have put, and anything could have happened differently, and Cao Cao would have been dead. So it makes me feel like this maybe didn't happen in real life, just because, you know, we know Cao Cao did survive. So maybe it's just kind of like, I don't know. But that's just my opinion. I'd love to know what you guys think. Do you think this really happened? Do you think Guan Yu really would have done this? Or do you think maybe this didn't happen at all? There's no, like I say, no, I don't think there's any particular historical evidence that says it definitely happened, but it's one of those debated points, I think. But yeah. So, with Cao Cao surviving, even though he survives, he's able to retreat back to the north, it's still a massive defeat for him. This is a massive shock for the whole of China. Sun Quan has defeated Cao Cao's invading forces with the help of Liu Bei and his men. And so they have to take advantage of this situation. So Sun Quan and his forces and Liu Bei and his men continue to attack against Cao Cao and his southern places and the places in Middle China where Liu Biao used to control. But just because Cao Cao forces were defeated at Chibi does not mean this would be easy. Cao Cao may have gone back north to kind of, I guess, regroup, but he left behind very capable officers such as Cao Ren, Yu Jin, Xu Huang, and Wen Ping. But during all this chaos and this fighting and the pushback against Cao Cao and his lands, Liu Bei was able to find much success and even gain a firm hold over lands in southern Jing province, allowing himself to finally gain another foothold he could expand from after so long, as well as attaining even more gifted generals. So the best way to picture how this happened is that in Jing province, where Liu Biao used to control, when his son had decided to surrender to Cao Cao, a lot of the areas in the southern lands had maybe not agreed with this. They were kind of a bit more, had more autonomy and stuff, and they were to keep themselves a bit more independent from the situation away from Cao Cao. Not many people in Jing province supported Cao Cao, and wanted to join his side. There was a lot of people who still could remember Liu Bei, and of course they did not like how Cao Cao had managed to force them to surrender. So there was a lot of disdain and, you know, kind of upsetness in Jing province. Upsetness, is that a word? It's a word now, upsetness. So Liu Bei and his forces are able to kind of go down into the south Jing province, and there's many different people in charge of different forces and castles and stuff. He's able to defeat them all one by one with his forces and unite them all together. I think one of the best and most important parts of this kind of battle scenario is when Liu Bei sent Guan Yu to take care of one particular man called Han Xuan. Now, Han Xuan did not want to give in to Liu Bei, so he sent Yang Ling to battle Guan Yu, but as you might expect, he was killed. So next he sent Huang Zhong. Now, Huang Zhong is an older man. You know, he wasn't one of the younger people. He's generally known to be quite an older man, extremely skilled with a bow, and of course other weapons, but he was kind of most famous for his actions with a bow, and he would in the end become one of Liu Bei's tiger generals. Now, him and Guan Yu, they fought, but whilst fighting, they gained a respect for one another and would not slay the other. Han Xuan, from his position, seeing this, orders Huang Zhong to be put to death. But Wei Yan, another one of his officers, cannot accept this, and so he saves Huang Zhong and leads a small revolt against Huang Xuan. Wei Yan then defeats him, takes over his position, and surrenders the city to Guan Yu. And not only Huang Zhong, but Wei Yan also becomes another important general to Liu Bei. Though Wei Yan doesn't get to become a tiger general like Huang Zhong, he's still extremely respectable in his position, and I guess he's probably, maybe just below the tiger generals. I think a lot of people underestimate him. I think he was a pretty capable general at the time. A lot of his actions, there's lots of good things. A few silly things here and there. He's a very interesting character to talk about. So yeah, and maybe we can talk about that with his own video. If we, like I say, we need to find out more about Total War 3 Kingdoms and what we're likely to see. But I'm hoping we will see officers and small officers like him and such. So not only has Liu Bei now gained a strong firm hold and position, he's now even gained some more valuable officers, and he already had some very capable and great officers as it was. But not everything in this counterattack went perfectly. In these attacks, he also sent Guan Yu to infiltrate and block Cao Ren's supply lines. Doing this, Guan Yu had to face against Yu Jin and Wen Ping. This did not go well, and they were able to defeat Guan Yu, stopping the Allies' plans. This allowed Cao Ren to continue to hold on, and he did so valiantly for a long time, but he would withdraw after it became clear the costs of doing so may be too much. So now, with a great victory behind them, Liu Bei and Sun Quan had to move forward in what to do next. And for Liu Bei in particular, things were better than they ever had been in some ways. He now had a good foothold, like I said before, some great generals, and he could now enact his plan to move west, which was not going to be easy, of course, but he had some great advisors with him, and this was Zhuge Liang's plan. How could they fail in this situation? But between the two allies, not everything was particularly good. Sun Quan was kind of unhappy that Liu Bei had been able to gain so much strength so quickly from these counterattacks with Cao Cao. He hadn't really been expecting that. And so there was a lot of tension between the two sides and a lot of distrust. And this would lead to the marriage of Liu Bei to one of the Sun family. Zhao Yu, who we talked about before, one of Sun Quan's best advisors, very intelligent man, suggests what he calls the beauty scheme to Sun Quan to seize control of Jing province from Liu Bei. In the plan, Sun Quan sends Lu Fan to lure Liu Bei to his territory under the pretext of marrying Sun Quan's sister, known as maybe Lady Sun, so as to strengthen the Sun-Lu alliance. Once Liu Bei arrives though, Sun Quan will then hold him hostage in exchange for Jing province. However, Zhuge Liang foils Zhao Yu's plan. So as I said before, remember that I said that in the book, Romance of the Three Kingdoms in particular, they do kind of show Zhuge Liang always outsmarting Zhao Yu, and this is a very good example of this. And so Liu Bei ends up marrying Lady Sun for real, and Liu Bei also manages to leave Sun Quan's territory with his bride and return to Jing province safely. When Zhao Yu leads his troops in pursuit of Liu Bei, he falls into an ambush by Liu Bei's forces, and Liu Bei's men chant kind of a mocking thing against Zhao Yu. This leaves Zhao Yu to cough blood and faint from the situation. This is kind of a recurring thing in the story, with Zhao Yu getting outsmarted by Zhuge Liang, and so he kind of gets sicker and sicker and sicker. I guess because he's having like, you know, brain problems because he can't handle it. He's like, how did he outsmart me again? That kind of thing. You know, we talked about before that these stories have a lot of these types of things. We had Zhang Fei kill a man by shouting at him. It's just, some of these things are great. I mean, is it possible? I mean, this one, you know, being outsmarted by someone could cause you to hurt your brain, so possibly. But yes, slowly and slowly Zhao Yu is outsmarted by him so often that it just leads to him getting sicker and sicker and sicker, until eventually he actually dies. Now, I think historically he dies of an illness, but you could say maybe that illness was brought on by his inability to be able to take on Zhuge Liang. Who knows? Who knows? But like I said, the Romance of the Three Kingdoms does tend to put Liu Bei's men in a more favorable light. I respect Zhao Yu quite a lot, actually, and maybe we can go into his own story later on. After this, former subordinates of Liu Biao, who were unwilling to serve Cao Cao, came to join Liu Bei. And then after the death of Zhao Yu in 210, and Liu Bei's growing influence in southern Jing province, Sun Quan's position in the north became more unattainable. And so Lu Su, who we talked about before, who succeeded Zhao Yu as the frontline commander of Sun Quan's army and moved the headquarters to Lu Kou, he decided to yield the lands in Jing province to Liu Bei. In diplomatic terms, Sun Quan's side thought that they were just maybe lending Jing province to Liu Bei as a temporary base that should be returned to them after Liu Bei found another base. Because as we talked about before, Sun Quan was not happy with Liu Bei gaining a strong foothold in Jing province, and preferably he would like it himself due to the fact that it is a very good strategical position. So now Liu Bei had gained himself a little bit more land, and with the north in the hands of Cao Cao and the southeast in the hands of the Sun family, Liu Bei would look west for his own lands, those specifically held by Liu Zhang. Now, Liu Zhang was the son of Liu Yan, the man who Liu Bei had first joined when he fought in the Yellow Turban Rebellion. Though one of the few warlords remaining, he isn't considered a very capable ruler, but he had brought peace to his lands. And then there was just slightly north of him, the warlord Zhang Lu. Now, Zhang Lu was not particularly powerful, but he held a strong strategic position and was very close to the borders of Cao Cao, who was a threat to all the warlords of China by this point, as we'd seen. He'd shown that he wants to try and invade and take over all the lands by this point. Worried that Cao Cao may also attack Zhang Lu in preparation for next taking Liu Zhang's lands, he looked for help in Liu Bei, after the advice of men, including one guy known as Zhang Song. Now, this decision by Liu Zhang would ultimately lead to his downfall. Liu Bei now had a position, lands, men, as well as experienced officers, and his ambitions meant he needed to grow in the west. It was really the only option. And with some of Liu Zhang's own men, including Zhang Song, who had advised him to seek help from Liu Bei, they wanted to even replace him with Liu Bei themselves, who they may have well felt was a more worthy person to follow and to rule over them. This all gave Liu Bei an opportunity he could not ignore. So again, this goes back to the whole idea about Liu Bei being an opportunist. Someone here is asking him for his help because they're worried about Cao Cao themselves, and Liu Bei takes advantage of this situation. Is that because it's the only choice he had, maybe? Or is it because Liu Bei is a charismatic man, maybe? He's very good with words, with people, and he can influence them to trust him, when actually, he's actually an ambitious man himself. Who's to say? You know, it's all up to you guys to decide. Is he really doing it for the Han Dynasty, though? Even if you think he's an ambitious man, doesn't mean he's against the Han Dynasty. He could still be trying to support the Han Dynasty, but wanting to kind of have more control and power himself. It's an interesting discussion. Obviously, the books don't really go into because they're painting him in a more positive light. But a lot of people these days like to paint him with this brush. I'd love to know more about what you think. So Liu Bei headed west, and he brought men, as well as a new military strategist he had been recommended, known as Pan Tong. Now, Pan Tong had actually been one of the men that he'd been recommended at the same time as Zhuge Liang, and he'd been told that Pan Tong or Zhuge Liang would both be great men that could possibly help him gain the success that he desired. And so now having both, Liu Bei was obviously in a very good position. So he took his men and Pan Tong west to help Liu Zhang deal with Zhang Lu. Liu Bei, now in Liu Zhang's lands, communicated with his supporters and established connections and made plans for how to conquer the land. Pan Tong gave Liu Bei 3 different plans to succeed, and Liu Bei chose one. He would gain control of as many men and Liu Zhang's armies in the north and march on Chengdu, the capital of Liu Zhang's lands. But he would make Liu Zhang think he was returning to Jing province, so he'd ask Liu Zhang for more men to help him in Jing province. Liu Zhang sent him a few thousand men, adding to Liu Bei's strength. Not much, but you know, it's still more than he had before. Then tricking Yang Hua and Giao Pei, 2 of Liu Zhang's officers, leading men in the north, he took their men and added them to his own. By this point, Liu Zhang had learnt the truth, and Zhang Song's brother, Zhang Su, revealed the secret communications between his brother and Liu Bei. This plot had also included others such as Fa Zheng and Meng Da. Liu Zhang obviously furious over this to learn that some of his own men had planned to betray him, and the duplicity of Liu Bei executed Zhang Song, though Fa Zheng and Meng Da were able to get away and join Liu Bei. So you can see the situation here. Liu Zhang had been looking for help to try and deal with Zhang Lu because he felt if he did not defeat him now, Cao Cao would just eat him up himself. And so he invites Liu Bei to his lands. His advisors all think this is a great idea because they'd planned to betray him in the first place. They felt maybe he was too weak, he was never going to unite the lands, he was too much of a peaceful man maybe, while Liu Bei was more of an ambitious man who may be able to inspire the people. And so they turned against him, and Liu Zhang basically was surrounded by treachery, we could say, and it was not looking good for him. Liu Zhang, though, would try to stop Liu Bei's advance, but he wouldn't try tactics that would harm the people. This is something to really take into account for Liu Zhang. He may not be maybe the most inspiring of leaders, apparently, but he definitely seemed to care about the people, and he didn't want people to die for no reason, you know. He didn't want to win if it meant the people would suffer in his lands. And this shows his caring, peaceful side. Sadly for him, though, none of his officers were able to stop Liu Bei, though he would eventually suffer a loss and lose Pan Tong. at a battle, Pan Tong's horse would throw him off his back, and so Liu Bei would offer him his own horse, Dai Lu, the same one that had saved him by crossing over the river when he'd been attempted to be assassinated by some of Liu Biao's men. As I said last time, it was a horse said to bring misfortune on its rider, even though it had given Liu Bei actually good luck and had saved his life. Now, riding Liu Bei's horse, the enemy would mistake him for Liu Bei himself, and the general Zhang Ren would ambush him with archers, hitting Pan Tong several times and killing him. And this would be his place of death. This would end up being called the Valley of the Fallen Phoenix, because Pan Tong was often referred to as the Phoenix. Liu Bei had held Pan Tong in high regard for his intellect and strategy, only probably second to Zhuge Liang. It is said that Liu Bei from now on would cry at the mere mention of his name after this event. Liu Bei's other officers would come to reinforce him from Jing province, but leave behind Guan Yu to defend it. Liu Zhang also, though, had very capable officers, such as Zhang Ren, who had killed Pan Tong, and many of these officers would later be important men for Liu Bei's future state as well. For example, Zhang Fei would face opposition from an officer known as Yan Yan. He defeated Yan Yan and captured him alive. Zhang Fei said to Yan Yan, "When my army showed up, why did you put up resistance instead of surrendering?" Yan Yan replied, "You people launched an unwarranted attack on my home province. There may be generals in my province who will lose their heads, but there are none who will surrender." Zhang Fei, of course, was enraged by this talking back, and he ordered Yan Yan's execution. Yan Yan was expressionless, and he said, "If you want to chop off my head, then do it. What's with the outburst of anger?" Zhang Fei was actually impressed, though, with Yan Yan's courage, that he released him and treated him like an honored guest. More importantly, there was also Ma Chao, who would go on to become one of Liu Bei's 5 Tiger generals. This would include Ma Chao, Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, Zhao Yun, and Huang Zhong. Ma Chao was originally an officer for Zhang Lu, but would duel with Zhang Fei and later be convinced to join Liu Bei's side. Eventually, Liu Bei would make it to Chengdu, and Liu Zhang, with options dwindling and not wanting to make the people suffer, more would surrender. Liu Bei had now conquered the West and now had his 5 Tiger generals. Things were in place for the 3 kingdoms to be born. Wu, Wei, and Shu were now the ones left to fight for the future of China. Cao Cao would currently hold the advantage, and the Sun and Liu family's relationship will continue to be strained. So that is where we're going to end the story here. I hope you guys enjoyed. This video was slightly shorter than the other 2, just due to the fact that if I went on till the end from this point, it would be way too long. But if I stop now and we have time to do another one, it'll probably be at the same time as this one, then we can have a 4th part as well. So there we have it. Liu Bei now has a great position to be in, though him and the Sun family need to keep their alliance going if they are able to kind of counterbalance Cao Cao. Though, as I just said though, these relationships would be strained, in part due to the things we've already talked about, but further things later on would make things even worse. Can Liu Bei and his army stand up against Cao Cao? Can the Sun family be the ones to take over China? Will Cao Cao just dominate everyone? I'll see you for the final and last part in part 4, hopefully coming soon. I'll see you then.